So welcome to another episode of the Mindful Movement. And as you may notice, I'm not in the studio. I'm actually on my way to a town in Georgia called Mableton. And I'm here to support my friend and fellow teacher in Angola, pomades, in one of his first events that he's hosting as a teacher. So today I had off, and I thought, hey, that's the best way to celebrate, to support your friends. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. Everything about this episode is going to be different. 8-hour drive, and look, I'm filming a podcast. But aside from that, I wanted to talk a little bit more openly or freely about a few things. I don't know how long this is going to be or how long I can actually record. I did want to talk about at least limiting beliefs. If we get to it, maybe how common roles in society impose limiting beliefs by accepting certain roles and role definitions, and then possibly even the shadow of those limiting beliefs and where they might be hiding. I don't know if we're going to follow that specific order. We may jump around back and forth. Let's see how well I do without notes or an outline. I want to ask you a question. What do you think your most limiting belief is? The follow-up to that question is, do you think that you would know? The reason I ask is because a lot of us, our beliefs are so foundational to how we understand the reality around us, our existence, that those never really come into question. Like very fundamental, foundational things, they never come into question. That's just the way it is. What are those beliefs correct? Are they limiting? And should we keep them? I was thinking about examples of what a limiting belief is and how it could be harmful and maybe how it could be positive. So the first thing that comes up to mind is and this is going to be controversial, but a very limiting belief is that my religion is the only truth. That's really common. Whether you're Catholic, Protestant, Muslim, Jewish, there are common beliefs and sentiments that whatever the one I'm in is the truth. And it very much limits us in our ability to accept the other. And there might be arguments about, I accept everyone. But if you were, let's say, looking for a partner in life, a wife, husband, would you necessarily marry interfaith? The answer is likely no. Now, I do know people, I've worked closely with people, one of my old co-workers, he is Catholic and she is Jewish. I think that's the way it is. And they learn to make it work. But if you are very much firm in your beliefs, it often does not. Now, is that necessarily negative or positive? I think it could go both ways. When you look at values, when you look things that you respect or that you need to relate on, having key values across the board makes a lot of sense. There are people that believe a whole bunch of different things, and those differences in belief often cause conflict, divisions, breaking off. Even in capoeira, it's the same thing. So what good could come out of that? Again, maybe alignment with, values. Maybe, I don't know, it's hard for me to think. I keep thinking about something along the lines from Jiddu Krishnamurti. I can't remember if it was from Freedom from the Known or one of his talks, but he says something to the extent that separation is one of the most fundamental acts of violence, when you separate one people from another. If we zoom in more to an individual's perception of themselves, for example, let's say you want to have your own business and be financially free, but along the line you say, I don't know if I will be able to do that. That's too hard. Whatever the negative self-talk is, do you think with those things you'll actually achieve that goal of owning a business or becoming financially free? Now, it might not be as overt as thoughts and feelings that you can clearly observe. Some of these things may be built into systemic identity. I am this type of person. I have ADHD. I would never be able to do that. Oh, I'm dyslexic. There's no way I can do that. It's interesting how we choose that identity and we attach a label to ourselves, and then we limit our ability based on whatever labels and identities we choose. Sometimes our limiting beliefs are tucked deep, deep within. And what do I mean by that? Back in my 20s, I mentioned this previously, I didn't really have a good relationship with money. As a matter of fact, I truly believed that money was the root of all evil. And what I saw regarding money was a lot of negative emotions. I didn't have it, So of course I didn't like it. And as a matter of fact, when I look back, I can see how my beliefs in my relationship with money dictated the quality of my life, because it effectively repelled more money away. It wasn't until I started really getting down into what it is that I believed was I able to change or take inventory. And I remember reading this book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And he introduced this concept, or the book introduced the concept of the Book of Law. And the Book of Law, of course, are things that we write down in our memory that assemble our paradigm, that they define how we understand the world around us, how things work, how things should work, idealisms. And we may consciously choose these things, we may subconsciously choose these things, but they're all at work. They're all at work informing how we tell the story of our life as we go through it. So it wasn't until I was able to really take that analogy, the Book of Law, and I would go through and I'd ask myself, why do I believe this? Why do I believe this? Why do I believe that? And piece by piece, over time, of course it took time. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of self-awareness. It takes a lot of curiosity and the willingness, the desire to change. But it wasn't until I actually started digging, questioning what it is that I believed, was I able to then start thinking of, was I able to start seeing and observing what it is that I actually believe, and then making a conscious effort to either change what I believed or strengthen what I believed. One of the tools that went along with this self-analysis, or this analysis of the Book of Law, meditation. I used to meditate on and off and try to practice. I was always curious about it. And I started meditating, practicing it. I had no idea what I was doing, but I would try to watch my thoughts, try to breathe, and do whatever I could find. Went to a couple workshops and classes on meditation. And the more and more I meditated, the more and more I was able to observe objectively the content of my thoughts. And it may seem subtle or super simple to say it that way, but don't we all observe the content of our thoughts? And we do, but the quality of the relationship is what I'm really calling to mind. A lot of us tend to experience our thoughts as if we're completely enveloped within a movie, and we're within the movie as the lead character, and we might also be narrating. We're interpreting the stories, we're replaying, we might be rehearsing some dialogue and imagining, ruminating some scenarios in our head, and whatever the case is. Then there is observing all of that from the observer's perspective. And the best way I could think about that is if you were to liken your conscious stream as almost a person sitting in a theater, conscious that they're in a theater, watching a movie and observing what is happening, rather than they're in the movie. And the more you can meditate and draw space in between the thoughts, that space within the thoughts is not just laterally or in linear line from thought to thought. That space forms around 360 into a distance away even from the observer, which is us. What do I mean by that? Is that we no longer are in the midst of our thoughts. We can observe them passing by without necessarily being completely enveloped in them. Now, what is the benefit of that? A lot of times our thoughts will trigger our emotional body and hijack our entire nervous system. Last night, 100% that happened to me. A situation was arising. I was not happy about it. And it completely took over my physiology. My heart started beating. I felt my temperature rising. And I was definitely not my normal, chill, calm self. As I noticed that, though, right, I was able to make a choice of, do I want to be in this? In the past, definitely. But through years of being able to observe the thoughts, I realized it's just a thought that triggered an emotional reaction. It's not my reality. It's something happening in my reality, but it doesn't have to take me over. And I think the more you're able to see these things and separate yourself, you the observer from the content, the more personal power you will have. So through meditation, being able to observe your thoughts and changing your relationship to them can give you the ability to reclaim your personal power for sure. But where are some of the sneaky where do these limiting beliefs hide? Where are some places that they can hide? Number one, it could be in the identities that we form for ourselves. So where do some of these limiting beliefs, where do they hide? Where do they come from? So one of the first things that comes to mind is when a child is with their parents, and a maladjusted parent who has no emotional intelligence, who may be dealing with their own issues, makes a comment to their child, "What are you, stupid?" Or "You must be really dumb," or something belittling. Those comments, especially at a young age, at a formative age, take deep root. Whether the child is conscious in it, even if that child is smart and very intelligent, there's going to be these feelings that come up every once in a while that undermine their ability to believe in themselves. It may take a lot of digging to eventually find that the root of your insecurity was placed there by your parent. And interestingly enough, a lot of that, the dynamic of the relationship with the parent tends to instill very formative beliefs on a person. If it's dysfunctional, it could form a belief that you can't trust anybody. You could form a belief that everybody's out to get you, that everybody's going to take advantage of you. You could form a belief that you should be a people pleaser. There's a number of things that program us to show up in a certain way. And despite whether we want to change it or not, if we have a conscious thought to say, hey, I want to reclaim my personal power, but then we give it up by believing we have to please people in order to be accepted. Those are two very conflicting beliefs. And it's not until we do that inventory do we really start looking at what they are and where they came from. And when you start looking at where they come from, that may also give you insight on where and how you can relate with those parts of your experience. Another belief is maybe how you should show up in the role that you choose. How should you show up as a man? How should you show up as a father? How should you show up as whatever role that it is that you're trying to express yourself as or through? Depending on your beliefs about how those roles should show up will determine what limits you place on yourself as far as what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Sometimes we have to do an inquiry on, do we actually agree with how those roles have been defined? Sometimes we can choose. One of the things from my personal experience is that growing up, I really didn't have a solid and consistent role model as a male, or male role model. My father and my mother got divorced when I was 2. There were various people in and out, and most of them I didn't have a good relationship with. If anything, the general sentiment was I wasn't wanted there because I interfered with their game. And so a lot of those things played a part in my formation of what it means to be a male. But interestingly enough, it wasn't that I should be like those things. It was that I should be the exact opposite. But along the lines, I started to assemble characteristics from various people who I admired. There were certain people that came across who were influential to me that I did relate to, or that I saw as a definition of success. And those people, fortunately enough, were great role models, even though they were in my life for a limited period of time. One of my sense of humor, which I had little as a kid, I always remember my childhood being very gray. And it wasn't until maybe 13, 14, I learned that the power of having a sense of humor and how that changed a number of aspects of my life. But the point that I'm trying to make is that because I didn't have a strict role model or a strict definition or somebody who would indoctrinate me into what it meant to show up as a male or a father or whatever the case may be, there are some pros. There are opportunities to assemble your own and to define it in a way that makes sense to you. And there's some downsides. I would say yes, there are a lot of things I lack in. I don't have the recipe for a lot of things. I relate to my children as much as I know how to, the best way I show up, but I have a feeling I'm missing something. And time will tell. But these limiting beliefs, they can hide anywhere. They can hide in the roles. They can hide in the very most fundamental way we see the world around us. So I would love if you took an introspection on the various roles that you serve, the various things that you believe. Look at those things and question why they exist. Go back to a very inquisitive 5-year-old and start asking the questions why. And see if you can refuse the just because. And the more you do that, I think the more you're gonna find out what exactly shapes your current present state. And until you choose to change those beliefs, if they end up being negative, you're highly unlikely to fully attain the things that you're trying to manifest or that state of being that you're trying to achieve. So thank you. As always, like, subscribe. Hope that this driving wasn't too distracting. And I look forward to our next episode, The Mindful Movement.